Welcome to Venture with Joe and Cody, where we take a deep dive into the minds of leaders and innovators making a real impact today. I'm Joe.
And I'm Cody. And we're here to bring you the raw stories, the successes, and the setbacks that these trailblazers have experienced in their journey to where they are today.
Every week, we sit down with a new guest who's ready to share their insight and advice on business, entrepreneurship, and making a difference in their community. From local community members to industry experts, you're going to get the unfiltered truth behind their success.
So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the business world, join us for a journey of learning and inspiration.
So let's grab a drink, settle in, and let's get started. This is Venture with Joe and Cody. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Venture with Joe and Cody. My name is Joe Skipper. I'm the owner of Skipper Realty Group, brokered by eXp Realty out of the state of Oregon on the West Coast. I'm with Cody Wilhelm with Residential Mortgage in Washington, but serves Oregon. What's going on, man?
Yes, just enjoying the sunshine. Feels like a little teaser. I'm optimistic that we get some snow here. I'd love to get some snow, but
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy. The sun. However, we don't know when we're posting this, so
that's true.
It may not be sunny by the time people are hearing this, and they may think
it's either sunny or it's raining.
At the time of recording, it is sunny, cold, and nice.
Yes.
Yes. In Oregon, which is rare in the area we live. If you're listening from another state or other country, this is rare to get the cool, like cloudless skies. So
it's beautiful.
We'll take it while we got it. Yeah. Absolutely. But today I wanted to go over kind of, I know we've interviewed each other kind of like how we got where we started and, what we got into, some of the things that we faced. But I think going into the new year, I think it's good to kind of chat about, some of the successes that we had, some of the failures that we had, some of the things that have worked, didn't work. I always find it myself helpful to hear from people that actually live in the world, that do what we do, or just in business in general, that can kind of provide some insights into whether it be motivation to be like, hey, keep pushing through. This is what I struggled with. Or whether it be like, hey, don't do this because I tried it and it sucked. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of go into that and talk with you, just kind of like, just give us a brief intro of like, I know that I personally know how you got started, but give people an intro into how you got into lending. Lending's super interesting to me because like real estate, it's one of those fields that's very tough to stay in. And you've been super successful even through some really hard times through that. So kind of what got you into lending, and kind of we'll start from there, and I'll just start jabbing at you with questions whenever I have them.
Yeah. So I'll go back a little ways and then kind of rapid fire through to where we're at now.
Yeah, I don't want your whole life story.
Yeah. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't the person that was like, I want to go to college and I want to do this. I knew I didn't want to go to college. I liked school for the social side, but not for any of the schoolwork. So I kind of just was in construction related work. And I enjoyed it. And I got to a point where I was doing outdoor or underground utilities, and the guys there were super cool. And they were like, dude, get out while you're young, save your body. So that's really kind of what started the process of me thinking a different mindset. And then just job after job after job, just trying different things out and realizing what I did and didn't like. And getting into the lending side was honestly from failures of other positions. I kind of started to get into more of the sales side of things. And I was working for Comcast doing door-to-door sales. And I'm not a door-to-door salesperson.
Yeah,
I can't do it. I'm not a pushy person. So for me, like, you have to be a certain type to be able to sell at somebody's door while they're having dinner at 6:30 in the evening, right? Like, it takes a special person, and I'm not that special. So I got to a point where I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I got a wife and I've got a baby. I got to do something. And a friend of mine introduced me to the business, and I had no idea about it. Didn't know, had never bought a house, no clue what to do, but I'm like, cool, let's give it a shot. And so it's been a perfect match for I think my skill set. There's definitely sales involved, but it's more of like selling yourself. It's more kind of like what you do, right? You're selling homes, but you're not really like, it's not your product. You're selling yourself as somebody that's trustworthy and honest, and you're going to take good care of them. So it's been an interesting journey. I think I'm 11 years into it now. And in each year, it's something different. Like, first 8 years, every year got better and better and better and better. So it's kind of like, it's motivating. It's exciting. The last couple years, they have been down years. I think they've been down years for a lot of people. Some people I know are just killing it, but it really brings things into perspective and makes you realize that you maybe overanalyze a little bit with business, where it's at and what's working and what's not. When things are going great, I think you don't tend to really question what you're doing or figure out like, okay, why isn't this working? What's going on? When things are going well, you just assume that everything that you're doing is working. When in reality, I think something that I learned is, yes, what I was doing was working, but it was also a good housing market.
Yeah.
And, these last couple of years have trained me a little bit better to really focus on my process of things rather than just kind of going about it. Like this market that we're in, you really have to go out and get the business, as opposed to being somebody in the industry that is part of the process. So
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that, a lot of what we do in lending and real estate is you see an influx of people get into the industry when the getting is good. Rates are low. I'll be a lender. I'll be a real estate agent. My buddy does it, makes a ton of money. You always hear that. And when you're successful, when it's like that, when the housing market's just booming, all of your processes appear to be working well.
Yep.
And you don't have time to really evaluate the processes either. And because you're making so much money, you don't care where the money goes because you're doing well and you're like, everything works. So I can't get rid of it. And so kind of a blessing in disguise. And for people that are listening and thinking about getting into the industry, it's really, you have to evaluate and audit your processes all the time. Even when things are good, because you brought up a great point that when things are good, you just ignore it. But when things hit, and we've had a couple down years, you really have to start evaluating, does this actually work? Does this, do these Zillow leads for $1,500 a month actually get me business that makes up for the $1,500 a month that I'm spending? When you were selling 30, 40 houses, you didn't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a really good point and I hope people take that in of you really have to think about your processes and what works and what doesn't, and just adjust to that, and that changes year to year. I don't know if it's the same with lending. Is that what works for you in 2024 will probably not work for you in 2025. Maybe it will, but you can't just assume that, hey, I do this and I've done this for 10 years. This works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think most businesses are the same way, right? You take out the financing and the real estate side. I think all business, you're constantly adapting to what the client's needs are, where they're coming from, how business is done. And the same thing just goes for us, if there are not tons and tons of people looking to buy homes, well, okay, now you got to kind of retrain your brain to go, all right, where am I going to get that business from then? Who do I need to get in front of? So which I think is good. And I think that's where a lot of people that got out of the business realized that it's a hard job for real estate and for lending. When the deals aren't just flowing in, it's tough because, again, we're not selling a product. We're selling ourselves to be in front of the right people. And, it's tough to find those people,
and it'll smack you right in the face. And that's why you see the lenders and agents drop off, because they get in at unfortunately, they get in at a time that they don't have to evaluate that. And they don't stay long enough to have to adjust to a downside. So on that note, you probably got in 11 years ago. What are some of the challenges, if any, that you faced when you first got in, or was it just booming?
No, I mean, it might have been, it was probably starting to get busy because it was June of 2013 when I got into it. The economy was recovering. The housing market was starting to kind of pick up momentum. Homes were really cheap then still. But I don't think it was fully recovered. So I would say the biggest struggle for me personally is that I went into this business not knowing anybody. I didn't grow up here in Vancouver. So I'd been here for a couple years, didn't really know anybody other than my wife and her family. And my manager at the time was not really a great coach, leader. He was there in the office, and that was about it, right? So it was kind of, my biggest struggle was just where do I get business from? I don't know anybody. I don't know where to begin. We were doing online leads. So when I first started, that was my vision of that was what I thought the job was all about, was you just called leads and it was just rate shoppers. And I realized slowly that that's not really the ideal situation for most people, right? Because then it's all just a transaction. It's no longer a relationship. And once I slowly started to build relationships, I realized that there's so much the lead and get to it right away. So the biggest thing for me, the biggest struggle was just, where do I find these people that are looking for homes, or people
Yeah.
that are interacting with these people, real estate agents, financial planners? How do I get in front of these people? You kind of just trial and error, and what works, what doesn't work. I think for a lot of people, it's scary to jump out into that, and it still is for me to this day, right? Like, I still don't feel like I can just, go talk to anybody about anything anytime. There's still that self-doubt and everything, but it's just stepping, like, one step at a time, of like, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my thing, and just sticking with it, because
Yeah.
everything that I feel like I have done that I've stuck with has eventually become successful, whether that's small success or big success. I think it's just sticking with it and not just getting burnout after 2 weeks of trying this thing or talking to somebody, and then you just get denied and you're like, oh man, what do I do now? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what
Yeah, I
about you?
think that,
You like,
yeah, I guess, like, my biggest, I think, my toughest time that I faced was I started part-time, and I had the mindset that this was going to be a business, because I read a lot of books. I read a lot, like, listened to a lot of podcasts. I listened to everything. Like, I took it all in. And there's different theories on, being a part-time agent versus being a full-time agent. A lot of the main negative that I always heard was, like, being part-time, you can't run a business part-time. You would never run a Wendy's part-time. You'd never run any business. You would never just say, I'm going to get into this business, but I only want to do it half the time.
mm-hmm,
And so, just based on necessity, I had to. But the problems I had came from that, because it was like, my mind was on, this is it, my business. But I was currently doing a 40, and at that point, I was I was in the state police. For those who don't know, I was in the state police in my final years, was with the governor's security detail. So this wasn't a 40-hour a week job. This was a 60, 80, 90, depending on if we're traveling, an hour a week job. It coincided with a great time in the housing market. So it was like a combination of amazing things, but it was so hard to be part-time, work a ton on my full-time job, but also trying to be good and successful at my part-time job, building a business. So I think that was my biggest hurdle. And I would say to people that are doing part-time, it's going to be much more difficult to build a business. It will be a slower process. It will be a harder process than probably someone that goes in full-time. I think there's a financial comfort that you get from part-time, which that's the main reason people go part-time in this industry, is the financial comfort to say, I have a job now. I'm going to dip my toes in the real estate world. However, there's a point where you just can't go any farther in part-time. And so for me, that frustration, that chaos, the kind of disorganization of my full-time and part-time gigs was like a biggest hurdle that I had to overcome. And I can say that, what I learned is that, kind of going along with what you said, is I really went in. The good part about what I did was I went in super focused. I was like, I'm going to pick what I like to do. I'm going to stay with it, and I'm going to just continue to do that. I'm not going to, just in lending, there's a billion things that are emailing us, calling us,
oh yeah,
showing us how we can do so much better in lending and make millions of dollars in real estate if you just follow our course, or if you just buy these leads, or if you just do this monthly and you just pay us monthly. And I was able to, the nice thing, because I had the financial comfort, was I was able to push through that. I was able, because I wasn't desperate for leads, I was able to kind of say, what do you like to do, Joe? What do you want to run your business on? What do how do you want to run your shop? So I think that the positive of that gave me the time. It gave me time to kind of evaluate what I
yeah,
wanted to do and how I wanted to run a business and what my business looks like down the road.
yeah.
So if that makes any sense.
No, it does. So when you got to that point, that kind of transition time, did you feel like you were more ready to commit to real estate full time, or were you just more like, I can't keep doing both of these and I see more of a future and I'm kind of mentally ready to go into real estate? Or because that's a big risk. Like, you're leaving the secure job that you've had for quite a while.
For sure.
probably
15
steady
years.
income. And then you go jumping into real estate that is extremely variable income, commission based. Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that are in that situation. And as the housing market continues to improve, there's going to be more and more people like, oh, maybe it's the time. So
For
like
sure.
for somebody that's gone through that, like what was the big push for you?
Yeah.
Was it the fact that it was just too overwhelming to have both jobs?
No, I think like I had a couple of issues going on. One, I drug my feet trying to start my own business. I had always wanted to do something in business. I was looking at like all sorts of little hobby shops, businesses, you know, snowboarding shops, like everything. Like, I went through the whole thing of like, I want to do something different because I think what I found with the state police, which I loved working for the state police, but there's a limit to your success, right? Like it's like financial success is here. You're a state employee. This is what you get, and that always bugged me. Having said that, I drug my feet too long, in my opinion, to get into it. By the time I was deciding to go full time, that I had a good problem was that I'm so busy at work with the state police. I'm also so busy in real estate. I had to make a decision. I would not have been successful at both for very much longer. So I had a good problem, but it was a problem of leaving that financial security to make the jump into real estate. And finally, I just was like, you have to do it. Like you can't any more longer. We only have one life we're going to live, and this is the time to do it. So it was a calculated risk. It wasn't, I wouldn't say I just recklessly jumped into it. It just was like, I had to do it.
You knew.
So yeah,
You knew.
I knew.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and it's
I
been
mean,
and
that's
it's not been easy. Like that's for sure. It's not been easy. Like,
no,
but I would say that
no.
there's a significant amount more full-time successful real estate agents than part-time successful real estate agents.
Oh yeah.
Just because you have to run it as a business. And I don't think a lot of agents, I think the vast majority of agents don't run it like a business. They
Mm-hmm.
run it like a hobby. And you can make some money off that, but you're
Oh,
not going to
sure.
be successful at it, especially in these hard times. 2024 and coming into 2025 could be a really hard times, and we'll see a lot more agents either jumping on full time and committing or
Yeah.
dropping off.
Well, and you just said something that I think is people look at a little different. When you said it's not easy, I don't think it's ever easy either. Like I think when people are having success, it can be viewed as like, oh, they just got it on cruise control, or they've got everything so dialed in. It is never easy because when you are really busy and everything's going great, it's almost harder then because now you're juggling so many different things, and you got so many different people needing you, and you're devoting more and more time to it, that it's like, yeah, you're having more success, but it's never just like, okay, I'm going to put this thing on cruise control and go do what I want now.
Yeah.
If anything, I do think it's harder when things get busier. It's easier financially and maybe a little bit more emotionally because you're feeling the success, but it's even more demanding when you do start to see that success. But
Yeah, I think in the real estate industry, even more so than other industries, especially with the HGTVs and all that stuff, it's easy to get wrapped up in like, look at that person so successful in real estate. And there's so many ads and so many people like wholesalers and fix and flip people and all this stuff. And they make it seem easy. You see, and the pay us $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month, and you can be just as successful.
right.
And you see the shows and you're like, dude, I want to be that person. I want to be fixing and flipping 18 homes, in Vegas and doing all this stuff. And it's like, it's just one of those industries that has been kind of over glamorized, and you don't see the actual like the hustle before that, because all those
Yeah,
people that have been successful and you're seeing the success, they're working like
they are. Yeah.
they're
I
putting all
think
that work in, and we see the results versus the actual work that goes in.
Right. I think over these last couple of years, I have seen and heard and been approached by more coaching companies than ever because it's
Yeah.
really the perfect time for them. It's
Yep.
like business is slow.
Yep.
Hey, let's get in front of these people. They're gonna buy in, and nothing against coaching. I've done coaching
Yeah,
before, and I think
absolutely.
it's great. But I think if you can be disciplined and you can be motivated and self-driven, you can do all those things that a coach is going to tell you to do. It's just you're paying for the accountability, which again is great, and I've done it and it works. But I think if
Yeah,
you're a driven person,
that's like a really good point to bring up to people is is, especially with YouTube and all that stuff now,
Hmm.
there's so many resources, and we were just talking about it off air, is once you pick a niche, like if you want to cold call as an agent, like if you were like, hey, I love cold calling, there are a million YouTube videos on
Right.
cold calling successfully. It's like once you pick what you want to do, how you want to run your business, like, hey, I want to be a cold caller, or I just want it to be a referral business, like I chose. There are a billion things on YouTube. If you are committed, take the time before you pay for the program gives you, that tells you this is guaranteed to do X,
Hmm.
Y, Z. Take the time, do the research into the free stuff that you can look into on YouTube, and
Yes.
go that route before you start seeing the shiny objects. Because in desperation, in lending is same with real estate. When you get those, like, you're like, man, I didn't close a deal today. Like, I didn't close a deal this month or 2 months. You start to get desperate, and you see the things on your email, and you see the coaches, and they're like, we're guaranteed to 10x your return on investment. Look at YouTube. Like, look at free resources that you've got, like whether that's your
Yeah.
brokerage or whatever. Yeah, I did that. So thankful that I did, that I didn't just chase the shiny object. I don't know. What's your
Right.
thoughts on that stuff?
I mean, my own personal thing, I fully support coaching because I think that coaching is a good
I
accountability
do too.
piece.
Yeah.
However, my experience with coaching was that that's all that it was. I went into it with maybe too high of expectations, thinking that it was going to be like this game changer for my business and I'm going to get all these different insights. Like, this person's been in the business for twice as long, three times as long as I have. Like, they have to know everything. They're coaching. And to me personally, it was really just a accountability partner. It was like, hey, what are your plans? What do you want to do? What do you want to Okay, let's put this all on paper, let's map it all out, and then now let's time block and let's do these things. And I got into it far enough to feel like, okay, I think I know what this is all about, and I lost interest after probably 6 months of the 1 year plan, because I just felt like I'm not really getting what I was expecting out of this. If I'm looking for accountability, I can find accountability for free, whether that's with my wife or a coworker or my boss or you or whoever it might be. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not trying to talk negatively about
No,
coaching.
not
I
at
think
all. Because
I think
there's
it is,
definitely, it's definitely good.
yeah,
It's
I
just
think
your
it's great.
expectations have to be correct, right? Like,
Yes.
you can't, the coach is not selling you selling. Like, the
No,
coach is not getting buyers into you, and just
exactly.
giving them to you and
Right.
helping you manage them.
And I think that that's one thing that I have realized over the years too. You talk to people that are successful, which I've talked to people in our area, within our companies, that are like top producing loan officers, and I'll pick their brain and just ask them what's going on, what are they doing, and they say the same thing that I would probably say too. Like, I don't really feel like I'm doing anything, super unique. I'm just consistent, and I found that this works really well for me, and it's just sticking with what you are good at and what you enjoy doing,
Yeah. There's
because
no
then
point
that's not going to
reinventing.
feel
You don't need to reinvent the wheel in this
right.
industry. This industry,
No.
both yours and mine, have been going on forever.
Yes.
And there are very successful people doing stuff that you can replicate today, like
Yes.
for free. And so whether that's, I chose social media years ago, and I was like, I'm doing social media. I didn't need a coach. I needed YouTube. And I luckily found Mike Sherrard, a pitch to him. He does amazing on YouTube, has a ton of videos, and ended up joining EXP based on that. But I found him for free. And I found a successful person that's saying, do this and you will have success. And I just bought into that. And I would say that to anyone that's getting in, to just find what other agents do and steal it. And
Right.
just do that. And is that the same for lending? Like, I don't dive into the
Yes.
lending side of things. Is that all there on that side as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not as much probably, because the interesting part with lending is you have kind of two separate parts to the job. You have one where it's the actual loan related, structuring a file, figuring out how to put everything together, making sure that it gets from pre-approval to closing.
For sure.
And that's definitely a very important part of it. But you have the other side of it too, of like, where are you going to get your business from? And so I think the sales side of it, there's a lot more on YouTube, and there's a lot more resources out there on like how to build your business, because I think, from my experience, I think that growing a mortgage loan officer business is really no different than it is for growing any other business, right? It's just getting out in front of people, it's talking to people, it's holding yourself accountable, it's tracking your activities. That's one thing that I realize when I start tracking my activities, I realize that I think I do a lot more than I actually do throughout the day. When I start to actually track it and you look back at your day and you're like, how many, I made 4 calls today. Like I swear I was on the phone all day long. I made 4 calls
Yeah,
today,
for sure.
and it just puts it into perspective because it's very easy to feel like you're busy all day.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, would you recommend to someone coming in, because I guess you can answer this indirectly, a new lender, do you recommend a bigger mortgage brokerage, or do you recommend a smaller? Because I think that at least in real estate, people tend to creep towards the smaller because you can tend to keep more of your commission, and so that money is so important that you're like, I don't want to go to this big brokerage because they give me, I have to give this much
Sure.
away.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the lending side of things? Is it beneficial to be in a bigger place, or for training, or for marketing, or no?
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably a lot of it comes down to what you're looking for. Because you're going to have some companies that, you're going to have way more resources. You're going to have like really good marketing stuff. They might have social media help. They might have all these things, right? But you're paying for that, which means it might not be you're paying for it monthly, but you're paying for it out of your paycheck because you're getting paid less every loan that you do. And it's probably the same thing on the real estate side, right?
Yeah.
You can go to a company that doesn't have all the flashy stuff and you're going to get paid more. And if you want those resources, then you're just going to need to create your own or get creative with stuff. But I think the biggest thing that I would say is it's really more on who the support is from your management, because that to me was, I feel like I learned on the go, which was great because that's kind of my style.
Yeah.
I'd rather get my hands dirty and figure out how something works.
Same here.
But I would have loved for that type of support of like, hey, manager, where do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I do? And it's like, cool, let's set up a game plan and figure this out. And like, they're not going to do the work for you, but like, let's strategize. Let's put some stuff together and I'm going to help you. And my first manager was not that way. My second manager, who is still my current manager, was that guy for me. And he just kind of like, I went to him and said, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do this whole job thing. And he's like, cool, let's start with this and jump into here and here. And it's like, I think it just kind of makes it to where you don't overthink it and go, well, I don't really know what
For
to
sure.
do. Or so to me, the biggest thing for somebody starting out is not that you can really know, but really get a good feel that manager, that person that's going to be leading you really has your best interest. And it's not just like, I'm going to get you in and plug you in and, send you on your way. Cause I think you do need a lot of support.
Well, and you guys have
feel you get success.
Like you guys, like with lending, I think the barrier of entry is a little higher, which is good. I find that like a lot of real estate agents, like they just take this test and you can really just be sent to flail around. Like honestly, It is scary to think of the little amount that you have to train in order to sell $1 million home the following day after you take your training, And I think like you can easily, depending on your personality with a small brokerage, thinking that you're going to keep a lot of your income is flail. Because no one's going to guide you, and no one's guiding you in anything. Like they're guiding you, but no one's holding your hand in this industry, just like they're probably not holding your hand in any industry that you build something, build a business. But man, real estate is just notorious for just letting agents take the test and say, go do whatever you want. And I think that goes to our reputation, which is unfortunate that, the stereotypes and all the stuff is we just don't have any checks and balances with that. So as a person coming into the industry or you're new in the industry, it really is dependent on your personality. Like I want to learn myself. So I was able to have a hands-off brokerage, a small brokerage where I kept a lot of my money, but I was also focused on learning. Like I was running it like a business. I wasn't just going in saying, okay, now what, guys? Give me my first buyer, give me my first seller,
Yeah.
And then I reached a point with that small brokerage to where I plateaued. I succeeded to a point where like I need more resources. I need to grow to the next level. And so that's when I went to a bigger brokerage, giving them more money, but getting a lot more in return. Getting that, the training, the resources the group I joined and all that sort of stuff has helped me to take it from that plateau level back to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a crazy industry to be a part of. Like
It
to
is.
just like to really think about like how, coming from the police world, man, it's like say what you want about police. It's like we had like a lot of training, a lot of standards
Sure.
that, and you hear about the bad stuff, all that, whatever, but there was a high standard like to be a police officer and to maintain your certification. And it was such a shell shock to me to come into the real estate industry and be like, what? Like I took the test. They're like, yeah, you can go sell a house.
Yep. Here you
Go
go.
open that door. Like you can go into a house by yourself. Like what is going on here? And without that, like I just feel for agents. And that's kind of why I think both of us kind of started this podcast and started this whole thing, is to kind of help people learn from the mistakes that we made. Like and because it's kind of a cutthroat. Like, you're not getting helped out, especially successful agents are not helping me out. Like
Hmm.
they want their clients and they're not
Right.
helping me with anything. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just an interesting world to be in. But
Yeah. So here to that, if you do have somebody, like in that situation, find maybe somebody within your company that's not in your area. Like it's not a competing real
yeah, for
estate
sure.
agent or a
For sure.
competing lender. And maybe somebody, if they're within your company, they're probably going to be more open to chat with you. But I think you can even find other people that are successful that are, find somebody that's we're in Oregon and Washington, find somebody that's in Michigan or,
Yeah.
Florida or something where it's not competing at all. And there are definitely some people out there that are, I think, at least ones that I've talked to that are willing to chat with you for 10, 15 minutes and
For sure.
give you a few tidbits. And I've also ran into some that give you absolutely nothing. And
Yeah.
like, okay, I mean, I get it. You don't have to tell me anything, but
I
it's
don't know if that's right though. I just feel like, there's plenty of business to go around.
yeah,
And to be an agent, and speak for the agent side of things, to be an agent that hoards their success is just so annoying to me. It's so painfully annoying. And it's like, what are you
yeah,
doing? Like how is this helping you? Like, no
right.
one's trying to steal your, food off your plate. It's like, it's just insane to me that agents do that. But
Right. Well, and especially when you realize too that I mean, you could give this information to 10 people and maybe one of those people is going to actually implement it into their
yeah, for
business.
sure.
The
For
others are going
sure.
to be like, "Oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that." And then they don't. Or they
Yeah,
do it one time and it
for
doesn't
sure.
like that's what I've never quite understood with some people that are a little more they don't want to share any of their secrets because one, they're not really secrets, and two, most people are not going to implement them because
I
it's like
know.
that's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Wow. Took you how long to do that? Okay.
for
Yeah, I
sure.
don't have that time. So,
I know. And if you're
but
confident in the work that you do, just be confident in the
just,
work you do. No one's
yeah,
taking your clients if you're that successful.
right.
So I've been very lucky with the group that I'm part of that like, and again, it partially goes to the fact that they're nationwide. So like you going to your point, like I can reach out to someone that's not directly competing with me, but they just are, yeah, super successful. So, join someone that's like supportive of you within
Yeah.
not just your management, but your peers
Yeah.
are supportive of you and want you to do well. So I don't know don't ask me this. I'm going to ask you,
Oh, man.
do you have I'm trying to think, I'm trying to rack my brain, but like what's like one of the biggest mistakes that you made going through this world, and how you overcame that?
How much time do you have?
Did you have so you know it?
No, I don't necessarily have like a one of those like big doozy ones that
Yeah.
just I will share a couple from the lending side though and I'll share my main point. I would say the biggest mistake that I think I have made is thinking that you know the guidelines when not realizing that the guidelines change all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like you run into this situation. Oh yeah, I had this 3 years ago, and I
Yeah.
remember this is what we ended up having to do. So you think that you know that you're good for this next one, and then you run into the next one, and it's like, well, that guideline changed a year ago, and I did not realize that. So that's definitely one that I try to kind of nerd out more and more over time on the guidelines and what updates have happened, and just being kind of keep those up to date. But I think the biggest thing for me, my biggest failure, is my self doubt that I let creep into my head. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. When things are going successfully and you're doing well, you're feeling good, you're confident, everything's great. When they're not going great, I think that's for me where the self doubt starts to come in. I'm a people pleasing type of personality. So when I don't feel like that is happening, I look at it as me
Yeah.
instead
What's
of just
going on?
like,
Yeah. What's wrong?
whatever it might be. So overthinking things and not being consistent when I'm consistent, when I just know, like, trust the process and just keep going, that's when everything starts to kind of open back up. But my biggest mistake is probably just the self-doubt and in convincing myself to not make that phone call or not go to that, talk to that person or share my business with somebody. It's, I think
What do
there's
you do to overcome that? What tactics do you use to start, getting over that?
a lot of times I will like listen to podcasts, lending specific podcasts for me, just because it's the business and you hear a lot of these people that are really successful that share their stories about what problems they ran into and how they overcame it. I talk a lot with my wife about it. She's a great support for me too. Coworkers, just I think for me is just talking to people about it, because then you get somebody that's somewhat or completely disconnected from the process. And there are times too where I kind of self-reflect a little bit, like I'm my talking to one of my kids about a struggle that they're going through. And I'm like, dude, you're fine. Just keep
Yeah.
practicing, keep doing it. Like, just because you failed this time, that doesn't mean that you suck at soccer. Like, you
Yeah.
just have to keep working on it. So
They bring
sometimes
a rational thing to an
yeah.
irrational mind sometimes. Yeah.
So sometimes when I'm helping my kids with stuff, I have
Yeah.
this little like light bulb that's like,
Oh, for
maybe I
sure.
should take my own advice too. Like, instead of allowing myself to quit too early or get frustrated because I made a mistake or I failed at not doing this thing. Like, that's where I learn the most, unfortunately, is through my failures. So it's hard. It's a hard way to learn. And a lot of times I think failures get thrown out there as like this big epic failure, but I look at it as a little bit more on like kind of the daily failure. Like, did I achieve what I wanted to achieve today? And if I didn't, then it's kind of a failure. And
Yeah.
why did I fail? And so kind of keeping that motivation. But I don't know, I mean, it's really more of a personal thing, I think, than it is like a really bad loan
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like epic failure that happened and it went into a lawsuit or anything like that.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
that's
have any fun
common.
stories, but
Yeah, that's common though. I think it's interesting you even say that because all of us have, everyone in any line of work has the self-doubt and it creeps in more than others. And especially in our industry, when things get slower, it's like, okay, what am I doing? What's going to happen?
yeah, I suck at this job.
I think like every other month, I'm thinking like, could I still do law enforcement? Like, am I still
Right.
physically capable to, like to
Yeah,
do this? So I'm like, I need to start working out just in case things fail because
exactly.
it's just a constant thing, like in business of
Yeah.
like, what's next? Like, what are we doing? And it's so interesting you say that because it's like I can talk, and I'm lucky enough to have Christina with me in the same industry, so I will talk to her very rationally and be like, she'll be freaking out about something or some sort of deal or some sort of like, hey, this isn't working out. I'm like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, just do it this way. And then I'll turn around and do it for my own thing and be like, what's going on? I can't do this. Like, this
Uh-huh.
is not working out. She's like, you literally just told me everything's fine.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, it's just an interesting game to play. But I think the self-doubt's real. It's just kind of figuring out a way to
Yeah.
push it back and really take a step back like you were saying. I think like you were able to take a step back and look at it from an overhead view versus like we all get into our individual deals, individual plans, individual things and what could go wrong, and taking a step back and saying like, look, this is not the end of the world. Even if
Right.
the worst case happens here, it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. So
Yeah. And I think that, going through all this stuff too, you really have to enjoy the job that you're doing too,
yeah.
because I think that's one thing that has kept me in the business. I was always bouncing jobs just because I got tired of stuff. I got bored. This job, this career has never been boring to me. Even when I have what feels like a really bad day, I wake up the next day and it's like, okay, today's a new day and new adventure. And I think it helps with those failures and frustrations that like, okay, I can approach today differently now. I learned a little bit from that. Whereas a lot of other jobs that I had, especially if it was more of like a clock in, clock out, you're doing the work for somebody else. It feels like this is the same thing over and over and over. Whereas what we do, although they're different, they're very similar type of businesses where it's whatever you do today is going to be, you reap the benefits or the lack of benefit down the road. So it's like, all right, I can't just have a little pity party for myself and, you know,
I know.
wish that things were different. Like, I have to make it different. Otherwise I'm screwed.
For sure. But it also allows that freedom to do what you want. And that's, I think, with working for someone else, it's like, I'm making all this money for this person, whoever it may be. Why am I like, this provides us the opportunity to make the money for ourselves and do what
Mhm.
makes us successful. And it's not all about money, but just like the success, whatever you define success as.
Right.
whether that's more time with family, more travel, whatever. It's like we can determine that, and that's what's kind of cool about this gig. And that's why, like, my final thought for people is if you're thinking about getting in, get in. Like, I drug my
Yes.
feet. I think that I would call a biggest mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake, but I didn't get in sooner. Like, the quicker you get in, the quicker you make mistakes, the quicker you respond from those mistakes, the quicker you start building the business, and then, the quicker you are at your end goal. Like, and I
Yeah.
think, like, sometimes I think back on myself. I forgot late 30s is when I started. Isn't that crazy to me? Like, I know
Wow.
we don't think it's crazy, but
Yeah.
I think of myself when I was getting in this and I was like, oh, I'm going to start this new business and blah, blah. I was like, speaking of self-doubt, I was like, you're old. Like, what are you getting into a new business for? Just retire and be like,
Right.
just retire. Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? But I just would say, I, that's a self-doubt of mine that I kind of have to continue to push out that, like, I'm too old for this, or I'm too old to get to start a business. But I would say to people getting in is to get in sooner. The sooner you get in, the sooner you can kind of go through the evolutions of a business and succeed quicker than I will.
I completely agree with that. Yep. Yep. Because you're gonna, like you said, you're gonna learn all those mistakes, and you're gonna go through that stuff early on,
Yeah,
regardless of when you start. So
for
you might
sure.
as well get it out of the way and
For sure.
build something up for down the road. But
Yeah, and pick something that you want. For the marketing side of things, I chose
yes.
social media. And when you do pick something, whether that's cold calling, door knocking, mailers, whatever it is, take it and go with it. Agents that are successful are on social media, they're online, and they're telling you their successes and how they got successful. So pick what you want to do, go find the person on social media, and just repeat what they do. Like, it's not easy, but it's
Yes.
simple. Like,
It's simple. It's
and
very
so
simple.
it's like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Pick a thing. I chose social media. I found some people that I could just follow and learn and continue to learn, and I just continue to be consistent with it. So start
Yeah.
early and be consistent. Don't jump
Yep.
for the next light bulb or the next flashy Zillow lead or the next whatever that someone's promising you. Just focus, like focus and stay consistent.
Because
Any
there's a
final
lot of,
words from you?
oh no, just to kind of tie into that real quick. There's a lot of ways I think people getting into it feel the need to spend a bunch of money because
Yes.
they're told that they need to invest
Yep.
the money into their business,
Spend money
which
to
is
make
great.
money.
Yes, and yes, there is some truth to
Yeah,
that, but
absolutely.
I think I probably waited for my first 2 or 3 years before I spent any money. I mean, I shouldn't say any money, but like it really trying to invest back
Like a
into it.
deliberate,
Yeah,
spending on something. Yeah.
like you're talk about YouTube stuff, and there's a lot of free resources out there. It might take you a little bit more time to create these things, or you got to go spend a couple bucks to get them printed or do whatever, but you don't have to just set aside, 10 grand for your first month to run your
Yeah.
business. Like,
Yeah.
have your bills and everything, have money set aside to pay your bills. But I think it can seem a little daunting for people of like, how much money am I going to need to invest into the business just to
For
get the
sure.
marketing and the advertising and stuff? Like word of mouth, social media, face to face, like old school is still very much relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Don't get sucked up into the things like the business. No one, no matter what business advertises to you that you pay them X amount and you'll 10 times return on your investment, they're still not going to hold your hand through it. So you can pay $10,000, $15,000 for a program. If you don't do the program and put the work into that program, you're still not going to make any money. So just choose what you're going to go for and go for it hard.
Yep. Yep. And make sure you follow Joe's social media so you can see what consistency looks like. Don't look at
I was
mine.
just gonna say, like, on that note before closing, it is a nice. I was just telling you offline of like, it's been nice recently to see the success, like, because you feel like, especially social media, it's a long term game. No one tells you it's a quick game, and I knew that, like, but even when you know it, you still struggle when you're like, I haven't seen
Yeah.
anything, I haven't seen anything, I haven't seen anything, and I'm just starting to see that, and so it's kind of cool to kind of see the
Awesome.
ramifications of like working consistently on that stuff. So, and
Right.
this podcast has come from all that. Me and you meeting has come from this. Like, so it's just been a good run, and I love the social media stuff. So it's not hard to wake up in the morning and do it. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, I've told you before, but you're the one who's really kind of inspired me to try to get better at doing social media. I'm still working on it. I'm not very consistent, but you staying so steady with it, it's like I feel like I'm guilty. Like you're my accountability partner, even though you don't know that you are. Like you set the bar there, and I'm like, crap, I got to just try to get one a week. I got to keep
Oh
up with Joe
man,
somehow.
yeah. Well, I'm trying. I'm trying. I think it is a successful way of building a business. I think social media, personally, I think is the way to go with how our society is going. And I think being on the forefront of people and being face forward to people that are always online, always staring at their phones, is like a good way to kind of keep your reputation and credibility up. So,
Yep.
just my 2 cents.
I love it.
Okay, man. Well, it was good talking to you, and
You too.
yeah, good blabbing with you about that stuff. And until next time, we'll chat with you guys later.
I like it.
Okay, see you, man.
All right. See ya.